Hi everybody, welcome to the Kentucky 4-H virtual experience. Today we're going to concentrate on SET or Science, Engineering, and Technology programs. My name is Torey Earle and I am an Extension Specialist for 4-H Youth Development with the University of Kentucky College of Agriculture, Food and Environment Cooperative Extension Service. In today's virtual experience, we're going to look at some concepts that relate to the Electric Excitement Project 3 book, Wired for Power. Now these concepts are related to about 3 of our state fair projects as well. The first 2 are the Simple and Complex Farm and Home Wiring Project, and the third is the Original Design Lamp Project. What we're going to do today is talk about wiring a plug. The things that you will need to have on hand for today's project are a short piece of lamp cord, and by the way this is 16-2 lamp cord. You'll need to have a short piece of 12-3 cabling, or some would call this extension cord wire. You'll need to have a standard household polarized plug. Notice that it's got 2 prongs on it. You'll need to have a heavy-duty cord plug, which you'll notice that it's got 3 different prongs on it. You'll need to have some wire strippers and a Phillips and standard screwdriver as well. And you might want to get your parents' help in using this part. You will need a knife of some type to remove the outer sheathing from the 12-3 cabling. The first plug that we're going to wire today is one that will work with the Original Design Lamp Project. You'll notice that this is the standard polarized household plug. The reason it is polarized is because it has 1 larger prong and 1 smaller prong. The larger prong is for your neutral or white wire, and the smaller prong is for the black or hot wire. Now you'll notice on our lamp cord we don't have black and white wires, but if you remember back to us wiring the lamp socket, the tip that I gave you was to use the ridged side of the wire for your white wire or your neutral wire, and the smooth side that had the printing on it for your black or your hot wire. And that's the way we're going to wire this plug today. The first thing I want to do is I want to take a knife and I want to split the lamp cord down the center just a little bit so I can pull it apart. Now you don't want to pull it apart too far because you don't want the split to come out the back of the plug itself. You also want to visually check it and make sure that you have not nicked the insulation on either side so you don't have any bare wires exposed. From there, since this is a 16 gauge wire, I'm going to look on my wire strippers and I'm going to pick the stripping notch for 16 gauge wire, make a couple of turns, and strip the insulation off one side, and then twist it like we did with our lamp cord while wiring the lamp socket. You twist it because this is a stranded wire and you don't want it fraying out. I'm going to do the same thing with the other side, and if you notice I have stripped between 3/4 and 1 inch of insulation off the wire. Go to the other side, crimp, twist, and pull. That will get your insulation off of that particular wire, and then twist it as well. Now I'm going to lay my wire aside for a second. If you notice, both of these have the insulation stripped off of them at the same length. That's one of the important things that you want to make sure of, because that's one of the things that our judges take into account for these state fair projects. Now I will say that you can use a pre-wired molded lamp cord with a plug that's molded on it, but in order to demonstrate another skill, that's why we're showing you how to wire your own plug safely. You notice that this plug has 2 screws on it. We're going to take our Phillips screwdriver and we're going to remove both of those screws. Now, different plugs may have different designs. This particular one is designed in this way, and when you open it up, you'll get to see why it has this design. As you open the plug, it folds out on both sides, and you'll see that there is a silver, which will be your neutral wire, silver screw, and there is a gold or brass colored screw, which will be your hot wire. But on this one, if you take a little closer look, you'll see that the silver screw even has the word white written on the little metal tab, just to make sure that you know which wire would go on that it would be your neutral wire. The next thing that I'm going to do is I'm going to take my Phillips screwdriver. Actually, I want to take my standard screwdriver, I apologize, and I'm going to loosen the screw on the neutral wire side. It will not come out all the way, it will stop, but I've loosened it enough that I can get the wire underneath it. I'm going to look at my lamp cord again. This is the side with the ridges on it. I'm going to make a small loop, and if you remember on wiring our lamp socket, we want to put the loop in the direction the screw is going to tighten. So we go back, we make sure we know which direction the screw is going to tighten. It will turn to the right to tighten. So we will put our loop facing the right side, and as we tighten our screw down, it will pull that loop underneath the screw instead of pushing it out from under the screw. Now, in looking at that, your insulation comes right up to the screw itself, so you don't have any bare wire exposed. And we'll move to the other side. Take our standard screwdriver, loosen the gold colored screw, take the other side of our lamp cord, make a hook or a loop in it. We'll put it around the gold screw in the direction the screw will tighten, and then we'll tighten it down, and the screw itself will pull the wire underneath the screw. Now all that's left to do is reassemble our plug. You'll notice that this plug has 2 notches right here, and that's where your split wire will fit. Pull it back this way so you can see it. Split wire will fit right in those 2 notches, and you notice that I don't have any of the split of the wire coming out past the edge of the plug. Going to push this down, and you may notice that it's a little hard to push together. What this is doing, whereas we tied our underwriter's knot for strain relief in our lamp socket, this we're going to use the screws with our Phillips screwdriver to pull this plug together on both sides. And you may have to apply a little pressure to get it done, but pulls the plug together on both sides. And this provides a strong, strain-resistant connection from your plug to your wire. And that's what it's going to look like when you get done with it. A properly wired lamp plug. Our second plug that we're going to wire today is for the heavier duty 12-3 cable, and it can be used for an extension cord, but for our state fair projects, this is the preferred method to get electricity into your farm or home wiring project. We've seen a lot of people use the Romex cable, which is what is used, the 12-2 with ground Romex cable, or the yellow sheath cabling, to wire an inlet for their project itself, which is acceptable, but the preferred way to do it is with some of the extension cord cabling like this with the 12-3. This particular plug, you'll notice it has 3 prongs on it. One, the rounded prong, is for grounding, and you notice that this plug is not polarized like the previous plug we did with the lamp cord. That's because the grounding plug will allow the hot and the neutral plugs to go in the correct outlets on a duplex receptacle. What we're going to do is go through how to wire this one, and it's a little more difficult than the other, but once you learn how to do it, it's fairly simple and straightforward what you will do for it. The first thing I want to do is I want to take the outer sheathing off of my cabling. And with this one, again, you may want to get your parents' help in using a knife. And you're very carefully going to score around the outside of the cabling. Now, scoring it just is making a small cut, but you don't want to make too deep a cut, because if you make a very deep cut, it's going to get into the insulation that is around the wires on the inside. So you just want to very carefully, and with this, whereas we've talked about an inch before, I want to go back just a little further, maybe 1.25 inches to 1.5 inches, to give us a little wire to work with on the inside of the plug. So I'm just going to very carefully score the outside of this protective insulation. Got a very slight cut in it. And I'm going to just pull that insulation off to expose the wires that are on the inside. Now, as I pull this apart, you'll notice there is a white wire, a black wire, and a green wire. And there's also some fill material inside the cabling itself. What you're going to want to do is cut that fill material off. So bring your wires back, kind of like you would be pulling petals on a flower back. And then I'm going to take a pair of scissors and just cut that fill material off so it's out of our way, because we don't need it anymore. That leaves my 3 wires exposed, and as I open the plug, you'll see what the difference in these 3 wires are. You notice we have a black wire, a white wire, and a green wire. The white is our neutral wire, the black is our hot wire, and the green is our ground wire. And that relates to the three different prongs that are on our plug. While I've still got my wire in my hand, I'm going to go ahead and strip the insulation off of the copper wiring. And since this is 12 gauge wire, I'm going to go to my wire strippers to my 12 gauge notch, and I'm actually going to strip off about 3/4 of an inch of the wiring on, or of the insulation on the wiring. And then, since this is stranded wire, I'm going to twist it so it doesn't fray. Again, go to my 12 gauge slot on my wire strippers, squeeze, twist, and pull the insulation off. Then I will twist my wire together. And I go to my third wire, 12 gauge slot, squeeze, twist, pull the insulation off, and then twist my wires together so they don't fray. The next thing I'm going to do is take my plug apart so I can get the wires on the inside of it. Notice that it has a strain relief clamp on the back of the plug. I'll take my Phillips screwdriver, remove these two screws, and if you set them to the side so you'll know where they are, because you're going to have them again when you put the plug back together. Remove that screw, and then I will take the strain relief clamp off and lay it beside my screws. You'll kind of start to see the inside of the plug here, what it looks like, but in order to get to that, we have 3 more screws that we're going to have to loosen. Now these screws will not come all the way out, but if you'll notice, they have a very coarse thread on them, so they back out really, really quickly. So I get them backed out like that, and then I can take the outer covering of the plug and the inner workings of the plug out. And you notice when I do that, the screws don't come out. They stay right where they are. Now let's look at the inner workings of the plug itself. There is a green screw. There is a gold colored screw. Excuse me, that is the silver one, I apologize. And there's a gold colored screw. We know from previous lessons that our gold colored screw is for our hot wire. Our silver colored screw is for our neutral wire. And the green screw is for our ground wire. And that matches up with the colors that are on the cabling itself. With this type plug, you're actually not going to have to worry about putting a loop in your wire, because you'll notice that there are small holes related to each one of the screws. And what you're going to do is you will slide your wire into that hole, and there's a clamp related to the screw itself that when you tighten it down, it will clamp the wire underneath that screw. That's why we gave a little extra insulation off of our cabling, so we'll have enough wire to work with to get it into the screws on the plug and still allow insulation to be inside the plug itself, so you don't have exposed wires on the outside of the plug. One of the things that you'll want to remember to do is put the housing of your plug onto the cabling before you start wiring. If you start hooking up the plug before you put the outside housing on, you're going to have to take it all apart again, or work the housing all the way from the other end of your wire back onto the plug itself. First one of these I'm going to put on is my ground wire. In order to do that, if I hold the plug up with the grounding screw on top, that actually lets the clamp inside of the plug fall to the bottom of that hole. So I'm going to have to turn the plug over so gravity helps me and slide my ground wire in so it's underneath the clamp. You can see that on the inside. And then I'm going to tighten my grounding screw down. Make sure it's nice and snug, and the ground wire is in, and clamp down tight. I'm going to look at my two other screws. If you notice, I move the wires around because my gold screw is over here. Do the same thing I did with the ground wire screw. I'm going to turn the plug upside down so gravity helps me. I want to make sure that that wire is twisted nice and tight so it doesn't fray out as you put it into the hole for your hot wire. You also want to make sure that that clamp is backed out all the way so you don't get your wire fraying in there with it. And this part takes a little practice. So I put that in. I look to see that my wire is underneath the clamp on the inside, and I tighten it down snug so my hot wire is underneath the clamp. The last one is my neutral wire. Turn my plug upside down so gravity helps me out. Slide the wire in, flip it back over, it's underneath the clamp, and I tighten this one down. Before I reassemble everything, I want to check and make sure by tugging on them just a little bit to see if all of my wires are underneath their proper screw clamps. Then I'm going to slide the housing for my plug back up. Now, if you want to take a look at it, pull this back, you'll notice that around the grounding prong, the screws are a little closer together than they are from one side to the other. So you can look inside your plug housing and get the plug itself turned correctly, because there's only one way that it will fit in there. We slide it back together and we tighten these screws down to secure our plug inside our plug housing, just like that. Now, strain relief, we want to make sure that our insulation is pushed inside our plug housing. Notice there is just a little gap right there, so I want to make sure that that's pushed back in. Put one side of my clamp on, the side that doesn't have the screw holes on it. And now I'll put the other side of my clamp on, and use your table or your workbench to help you with this. Put our two screws in and tighten them down. The strain relief clamp will pull together. See, it is still just a little bit loose, so we're going to tighten it down all the way till our strain relief clamp is tight around the outer insulation of our cord. See that it will pinch it together just a little bit like that. That way you know that it's tight, it's not going to pull out. And there you have your properly wired 3-prong plug on extension cord wire. I hope you've enjoyed our lesson today on how to wire 2 different types of plugs. Our standard polarized plug for household use on the State Fair original design lamp project, and also a heavier duty 3-prong plug to be used on the farm and home circuit wiring. As with all electricity projects, please make sure that before you work on it, you disconnect it from any electrical circuit. You do not want to be working on electricity while it is a live circuit. Electricity can be dangerous, but if you take the proper safety precautions, you will be able to work on it yourself. Make sure to stay tuned for our next segment, which will be dealing with the farm and home wiring project and properly wiring an electrical receptacle. Thank you for joining me today for the Kentucky 4-H virtual experience focused on science, engineering, and technology. For more information about the 4-H SET program, please check out your local University of Kentucky Cooperative Extension Service.